Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. And sorry that we're starting a few minutes late. It's Joe's fault.
Thanks. Thanks for throwing me under the bus.
Yeah, he's blaming me with some broken link excuse, but I blame Joe. But thanks for joining us today. Obviously, I have Joe Hamilton, CEO of Unigold, presenting. He's just going to go over the recent drill results and talk about some of the upcoming catalysts, just to make sure you're all aware of what's coming with Unigold, because it's exciting times. Before we get started, I will remind you that the presentation will contain forward-looking statements. You can find those on the company's presentation on their website. And feel free to input Q&A throughout the session. It can be pretty interactive. So if you have any questions, you can email them to me or put them in the Q&A box. And with that, Joe, I don't know if you want to give a little bit of background on Unigold for anyone that may not know the story.
Yeah, thanks, Deborah. I can certainly do that. I am assuming that most people are familiar with the story. However, if this is your first introduction to Unigold, we're an exploration company. We've been active in the Dominican Republic for about 20 years, since 2002. The picture behind me is the picture of Candelones Hill. That's the area in the Dominican Republic where we've been doing most of our work since 2010, identifying 2 million ounces of resources in that area. It's a sparsely populated area. There's obviously not a lot of settlement. But in any case, we're working now to move this project up the value chain. And to that end, we'll have a PFS available, at least on the oxide portion of the deposit in the first, actually in the next 5 weeks, it should be out. With that, maybe I'll just share my screen and I'll run through a couple of slides for people so that we can maybe get a better understanding of the company. But I'll stick to sort of the most recent developments and then what we expect to see over the course of the next 4 to 6 weeks, which are really the catalysts for moving the share price. We're quoted on the OTC, our main listings on the TSX Venture Exchange. We also have a listing in Germany under UGD B1. Our capital structure, we currently have 126 million shares outstanding. We have about 20 million warrants. If these were exercised, they're all at about 30 cents. So they're slightly in the money at this point. But if those were exercised, they'd bring in about another $5.7 to $6 million in total. Outstanding, we've got about 160 million shares. Eric Sprott is our largest shareholder. He owns just under 20% on a partially diluted basis. He does have some of these warrants. If he was to exercise them, he would go up to about 20%. And officers and directors are just over 5% ownership in the company. For people who are not familiar with the story, our main concession is here in the Dominican Republic on the west side of the country, close to the border with Haiti. Actually, the western border of our concession coincides with the international border. Once again, for people who aren't familiar with the Dominican Republic, it does have some of the largest, one of the largest gold mines in the world. Pueblo Viejo is the third largest gold mine on the planet, after Lihir and Morantau. It's run by Barrick and Newmont, the two largest gold companies on the planet as well. It's been in operation under Barrick and Newmont for the last 10 years, since 2010. But prior to that, it was run in the 70s and early 80s by a company called Rosario. It's produced over 25 million ounces of gold, and there's another 10 million ounces in reserves, and resources are about another 15 million ounces beyond that. So it's truly a tier one asset in the country. And it's in this mountain range that runs from Haiti into the Dominican Republic. That's an old volcanic arc, so epithermal mineralization as well as VMS mineralization. So the Dominican Republic is the largest economy in Central America and the Caribbean. It's a diversified economy. It's got a good middle class. It's about $20,000 US GDP. So once again, it's a great place to work, and it does support what we want to do. I guess the strange thing is, as I've said to Deborah on numerous occasions, is that it's tough when we're the only people doing exploration in the country to get sort of that momentum behind you. It's always a lot easier if you've got other players and a lot of news flow coming out. But we've been pretty systematic in what we're doing, and we believe this concession will ultimately get us where we want to be, which is to into a mining company. Here's a close-up of the concession. Each one of these stars is an exploration project. We've spent all of our time down in the lower left corner around the Candelones deposits, and that's what we're currently drilling, and that's where most of our news results comes out. But at some point, we will get out and look at some of these other exploration targets. There's probably another 20 years of work to do to follow these up, but most of them are drill-ready targets at this point. Just to give you a bit of a layout on the Candelones concession, there's an oxide deposit which sits over here on the west side. This is sort of a view looking north. This was a pit that we engineered around the sulfide deposits in 2013. We've done a lot more drilling since then, but these were the ore shapes that we had in 2013 of disseminated mineralization. Runs about 1.5 to 2 grams of gold per ton in those shapes. But in 2015, we discovered high-grade mineralization, sort of cores to these mineralization, and that's what we concentrated on between 2016 and 2020. I'll show you some of those numbers. But the most recent news that we put out was a new oxide discovery over here on the east side of the pit. We just put that news out yesterday. There's just one drill hole in it, but we didn't expect to find oxide there. There's no surface expression of it. It starts about 2 meters below surface, surprisingly. So our geochemistry didn't pick it up. So it's quite surprising, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to add to the oxides we've got here. We're currently engineering a heap leach operation on these oxides off to the ones on the west that drape over top of Candelones Hill. And if we can find more oxide, obviously that just adds to the economics. So once again, we're looking to engineer a heap leach. This oxide target, we put out a resource estimate last year, which moved 92,000 ounces of the oxides into measured and indicated. There's another 38,000 ounces in inferred resources. Most of those will likely be stacked on the heap in any case. The non-optimized pit had a 0.2 to 1 strip ratio, so very low strip, most of it being internal waste. The mine life on this heap is only 4 years, so we'll be producing about 20 to 30,000 ounces a year, something in that range. But this project, as I've said before, does a number of things for us. It allows us to train a workforce in the area and ensure that we've got our logistics set up, as well as our supply lines. And then it also supports an application for a mining license over the concession. Currently, a mining license, if it's granted, is good for 75 years of operations, which really gives us some good tenure over that ground. Our leach kinetics are very fast. We're doing column tests, a second round of column tests now, looking at various crush sizes. But we're getting, sort of 70% recovery in 3 days in the columns test. So very, very fast leach kinetics for a heap leach. And once again, a heap leach has a very low environmental footprint. So we're hopeful that the Ministry of the Environment will be able to approve this operation fairly quickly. There's no waste piles. There's no post-production tailings ponds. Reclamation should be fairly easy afterwards. But the real win on our project is the underlying sulfides. That's where most of the resource base lies. If you look at the resource that we put out, and this is 2013, in the pit area, we had about 1.5 million ounces that fell into a pit at a $1,500 gold price. And then just below that, there was another 300,000 ounces. I think most of this material will come into the pit outlines. With the work that we've been doing since 2015, concentrating on high-grade material, I think we'll see both the tonnage and the grade increase with the resource estimate we're putting out now. This resource estimate is underway. We started doing it in December. We put a pin in the map as of the end of December as far as the date is concerned. So we should be able to have this resource estimate out in the next 4 weeks as well. And I think you'll see a pretty significant increase to the tons in the grade as well as the contained gold. Mainly because this estimate that you see on this page includes none of the drilling we've done since 2015. And to give you an idea of what we've been doing since 2015, we've been concentrating on some of these high-grade targets that are within the pit outlines. This is the old pit outline. This is at the east end of the pit. Shows the new oxide target that we had. And target A and B, we've really increased the size of those since 2015. In 2013, when we did the initial resource estimate, we only had 1 or 2 drill holes into these at 100-meter centers. And we didn't really understand the size or the continuity of targets A and B. So what we ended up doing was drilling that out in that period of time, and we got some very good results. What it looks like now, here's the sort of the pit limit from the 2013 resource estimate. You can see that we've extended these high-grade zones to depth. Our deepest drilling to date on target B returned 7 meters at 22 grams. It looks as if target B is getting richer with depth as far as grade is concerned. And the results we put out earlier this week from 167 also indicated a new zone off to the east, outside of the pit boundaries, off to the east. We've only got one drill hole into it, but it's another epithermal zone that doesn't seem to be connected to target A. It's slightly different mineralization. So we're hopeful that this turns into yet another epithermal feeder similar to targets A and B. And then, of course, we went through target A, 33 meters at 4.8 grams, 4.9 grams. That's pretty consistent in target A all the way through. And the thing I would point out about this is that there's no really high-grade numbers here. For instance, this 7 meters at 22 grams, everything in that interval ran between 12 grams, and I think the high was 50 grams over 1 meter. But no super high grade, very consistent mineralization over good widths and thicknesses. These are subvertical as well, so they do loan themselves to underground mining because of their geometry. So very interesting, and we continue to expand these. This drill hole 167 and 169, these are currently being extended to intercept target B at depth. We should have those results probably in the next probably be 6 weeks, I would guess, by the time the lab gets around to giving us numbers. And we'll look to pull target B to depth as well and see if we can get some more depth extent on that. But it's certainly shaping up quite nicely to add ounces very quickly with those kind of grades. So the drilling that we're doing this year is looking at extending these. Once again, there's 169 and 167, the planned, looking at a long section. So you're looking north on this section. This is where those planned intercepts plan to come and pull target B down. We've also got a drill operating at target C currently, and another one at target D looking to expand these areas. Target D, this hole we put out last week, 177, was very interesting. It may have, it didn't have great gold grades, but it had 85 meters of epithermal alteration in it. So we think we're on another epithermal feeder similar to target C or target B over here at target D, and we'll continue to drill that and try to expand that over the course of the next 3 to 4 months as well. And then, of course, the new discovery that we had was over on this side of the pit, just below the andesite-dacite contact that's shown here on this long section. So it looks like there may be another epithermal feeder starting on that side. So we continue to get good exploration discoveries at Candelones. Just to reinforce what some of these grades look like, target A, 30 meters at 9 grams. Once again, very consistent mineralization. If you go back and look at some of the press releases that are available on our website, you'll see that these are, we publish the meter by meter assays in order to, just show people that we're not smearing out large numbers, that these are very consistent. Target B, it's generally about 10 meters thick, and grades are variable in here from 5 to, up to 22 grams of gold per ton with some very good copper numbers beside it. And then target C, it's a little bit narrower, but has the most consistent mineralization. Regularly get 10 to 12 grams of gold per ton with good silver numbers and zinc creeping into the system as well. In places we get up to 3 ounces of silver with 5 or 6 grams of gold in target C. So it's, gold, copper, silver system, and it's not dead yet. We continue to expand it with every drill hole we put in. So to bring people up to what we're doing, here's the sulfide pit again, the oxides on this side. There's very limited drilling in this area between the two. There was no drilling until we put out the results this week from a couple of holes that went in over here. We discovered new oxides, another zone over here. So we need to really expand the drilling to the east. Some of the drilling we did in the middle area here got some very strange rock for the geologists that are listening. This is just a sample of the rock we got drilling in that connector area between the two. This is a phreatomagmatic breccia. The ground mass in here is mostly dacitic to rhyolitic textures. There's lots of free quartz in here. The pink is feldspar, orthoclase feldspar. This is a blowout breccia. It's probably a volcanic vent that's in between the oxides and the sulfides. Most likely obliterated any mineralization that's in there, but we'll wait till we get assays back from this just to see what it's running. We don't have assays yet, but it's a new rock texture that we haven't seen before, and it does sort of add to the epithermal story. It seems to imply that we found the heat source in the vent and that we're proximal to it. So just in summary, what we're planning on doing this year, then the Oxide resource will complete a PFS that's underway now. That should be out by the end of the month, maybe into the first couple of weeks in April. Micon International is doing that for us. And as soon as they're ready to sign off on their work, we'll be able to publish it. We'll submit an application for a mining license in the second quarter. And then throughout the rest of this year, we'll complete the bankable feasibility study on the Oxide portion, and then hopefully assemble final permits by the end of the year. This isn't a large project. We should be able to construct it in 8 to 12 months. So it would be our objective to be in production by 2023. The sulfide resource will continue to drill. We're updating that resource estimate, as I said before. We should have that out hopefully by the end of March or in early April with a new resource estimate. But this is not closed off yet, so this will be an interim resource estimate. We'll continue with the drilling. We'll continue doing metallurgical studies. And then in the second quarter, we'll try to decide whether we want to attack this using open pit methods or underground methods in order to move towards a feasibility study. We'll do the trade-off studies on those. Obviously, an open pit will be a much larger operation, higher capital. The underground will be higher grade, lower capital, most likely. So we'll just have to see where it sits as far as the IRR and the NPVs on those two projects, but it's the same deposit. And then, of course, we'll start moving out on some of the regional targets. We did start drilling at one target called Montasso. We moved that drill back, which will now be, as we completed, I think it was 5 holes in that area. We're waiting for results. And we moved the drill back to start exploring the new oxide target that we found at the east end of the pit, and see if we can't expand that. And then, of course, we'll keep up with our community engagement programs. So that's, sort of gives you an idea of what the catalysts are. There's lots of news coming in the next 4 to 6 weeks, as well as exploration results. So I'm hoping that that we'll be able to increase our market cap, and we'll be able to increase the share price as this news hits the market. And some really material news. The resource estimate and the PFS, I think, are going to be really sort of underpin the share price. With our current market cap, I believe the NPV on the Oxide resource may be large enough to explain our market cap at this point, which means anyone who buys the stock today sort of gets the sulfide resource and the exploration potential for free in reality. So that's my pitch. I'm happy to take any questions or answer anything that people may want to know.
I have a couple questions, actually, Joe. As you mentioned earlier, a lot of people wouldn't say are unfamiliar with Dominican, but there's not a lot of stories there that are publicly listed. Correct. So, I shouldn't say that are publicly listed, but in small cap companies. So I think that there's, a little bit of misinformation and potentially just a lack of understanding of Dominican process, and even for myself. So when you're talking about permitting the oxide portion, what does that mean for the sulfides? Like, do they permit for a production level? Do they permit for a style of mining? Do they permit for the whole property? How does it work?
I think I'm still sharing my screen, so I can give you an idea. The way the current permitting regimen in the Dominican Republic works is that you get an exploration license that's awarded for 3 years. And then the owner can apply for 2 one-year extensions. We are submitting the paperwork now to get the first of the 1-year extension on this concession that we've got now. After a 5-year period, after you go through the 3 years plus the 2 extensions, you can reapply for the exploration concession. So we've done that 4 times successfully. We've held this concession since 2002. So it's not an onerous process, but it does require paperwork. And in order to hold concessions and get them granted again, you must do work. You must file semi-annual reports with the government and keep your environmental permits up to date. So we've done all that. The current exploration license was granted in May 2018. It expires in May 2023 once we go through those two extensions. But it's our intention to apply for a mining license. So a mining license under current legislation, as I said, gives a 75-year tenure. So what we intend to do is to block off a portion of this concession around the Candelones deposits in order to apply for that 75-year mining concession. The costs of holding it are pretty minimal. It's less than $25,000 a year under current legislation to keep, probably this bottom corner as an exploitation concession or a mining concession. So in order to go through that process, the first thing that happens is you must submit a pre-feasibility study, at least at that level, which outlines proven and probable reserves that are available. The Mines Department and the Ministry of Mines review that. And based on the project definition that they're given, they decide to go ahead with the mining license. But during that process, usually you will complete a full, while they're going through the, looking at the application, the company is usually will complete a full-blown environmental assessment under, with consultation with the Ministry of the Environment, who also have to give their approval before the mining license is granted. And that should include a closure plan. And then, of course, you've got to go through the community consultations as well, because the government will not grant a mining license, not just specific to the Dominican Republic, but I think anywhere in the world. They won't grant a mining license without having community buy-in. So it's our intention to complete the EIA, do most of the community consultation, which is underway now, before the end of this year. And we're hopeful that by the beginning of next year, we will get approvals from the Ministry of the Environment, the Ministry of Mines, as well as the community to start, going for the rest of the construction permits, et cetera, to start building the heap leach operation that's here. So that's sort of the schedule for what we're doing. And it's getting the mining license is critical, I think. But without the PFS, you can't apply. So that's why we're doing a PFS.
Okay. And then I have another question about permitting, which is Goldquest and now Precipitate Gold have run into issues with permitting and or community opposition. How will you avoid similar problems?
Well, community opposition is more about education and communication. We have retained the largest public relations firm in the Dominican Republic to help us with the community relations as well as the public relations in the country. So first things first, we've been the largest employer in this area. The block on this screen is sort of in the middle is where the town of Restauración is. It's a town of about 6,000 people. That's really the only settlement that's in this area. This is, I would suggest that there's no real industry. There's some logging in this area and subsistence farming. But, there's no large urban centers. There's no other industry in the area. So what we are doing now, we started last year, and we'll keep this up for as long as we're operating in the area. We've done surveys in the area to find out what the biggest concerns are for the local population. They certainly know who we are. We're the largest employer in the area. We found through our surveys that we have about an 80 to 85% approval or support, I suppose is the way to put it, for putting a mining operation in here from the local communities. So we don't see any pushback from the local communities. The question, of course, whenever you're dealing with mining is people who come from outside the local communities that are just against, mining in general. And so the opposition then, I think, will come from the urban centers rather than the local communities, if there is any. But the government that's currently in power is a lot more pragmatic than they were. And they have said consistently, look, we'll use science. We'll wait to see what the environmental impact assessment says. We'll review the environmental impact assessment. And as long as the local communities support the project, the government has said that they will support the project as well, as long as we can deliver an EIA that makes sense with an acceptable closure plan.
And what were some of those pushbacks from the community? Like, what did you learn from the survey specifically?
The biggest concern was water quality in the area, and I understand that it's an agricultural area, with subsistence farming, so they want to make sure their water supplies are protected, and they're protected after closure as well. So we took those concerns and we are using them during the engineering process to make sure that what we engineer around the mine site is up to world standards as far as water catchment, water treatment, water release. We'll also look at dust suppression, and we'll use basically the best mining practices we can find as we put in this operation, because while we want to be able to contribute to the community, we want to make sure that we don't leave any lasting impacts there either. It's the biggest thing that came back was water quality, and I think that you'll find that anywhere on the planet, I believe, around mining operations.
Okay, I think that's all we have on permitting right now. When will the pre-feas be completed and released?
Well, with 43-101 reports, generally, once the consultants sign off on the numbers, then they become material and we'll release them as soon as Micon decides to sign off. Then within 45 days of that press release, we're required to file the 43-101 report. So the current timeline, I believe, is that we should be able to get Micon to sign off on those numbers towards the end of this month. And then we'll file the 43-101 report sometime in May, most likely. And then we will submit an application for the mining license over the area as soon as we get the final report in May.
And when will the new resource be completed and released?
Well, the new resource is underway now. It should be released at about the same time. We were having discussions internally about whether we wanted to include the new resource in the 43-101 with the PFS and make it an omnibus, or whether we wanted to do it separately. And I think what that comes down to is just whether those two jobs are completed almost at the same time. So we'll just have to see, but I expect the last news I got from Micon is that they should be in a position to give us the first cut on the resource estimate by the end of the month, and then we can move from there and decide whether there's any tweaking that needs to be done to it. When it comes to companies and consultants, there's always discussions, shall we say, sometimes animated discussions about assumptions that go into these reports, and we'll just have to look at the numbers first, and then see if they've been done to our satisfaction.
And are you on schedule for both?
Yes.
I don't see any more audience questions, but I have some questions about the recent drill results. If you want to maybe pull up the slide of the intersections.
Yep. Just a second. Oh, that would be these ones?
Yeah, sure, that'll work. Okay. So in terms of the new zone that you think you discovered in the sulfide area, I believe you're going to call that target E? Target E
for the time being. I mean, it's a 12-meter intercept of about 6 grams. We're not sure, we don't have any geometry on it. It's a single drill intercept. But the mineralization is epithermal. It's coarse grain. The alteration is epithermal. So it looks very similar to the mineralization that we see at target B and target C, which is somewhat distinct from target A. Target A is mostly pyrite copper, whereas at target B, we start seeing more zinc and some silver coming in, and that's what we're seeing here as well. So hopefully that will turn into a new zone.
And so you still have 9 holes to release from the program that you did over January?
That's correct. Yep.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'll show you. There are a number of holes from this area in between the sulfide and the oxide. We were exploring in there to see if we could expand the sulfides and understand what was in there. If you look at this slide, we had 30,000 meters of drilling into Candelones Hill, into the hill that's behind me. We had 65,000 meters of drilling in the area of the Sulfide Pit. This is actually probably closer to about 80,000 meters of drilling currently. But we only had 8,000 meters of drilling in this area. So we wanted to go in and just look at some targets in there. So we've got a number of holes that will be coming out from this connector area. We've got a number of holes on the C target, which would be in this area, so the deeper C targets, and then we've got a couple of holes on the area between C and D as well that we've been looking to try to connect this area over to C. It looks as if it might bleed along the contact between the andesites and dacite. So that's where most of the holes will be coming from. And then we do have, we also have a number of holes from Montasso. Now Montasso was a target in our, it's this one, this star that's to the east of the Candelones area. We put a number of holes in there just starting our regional exploration program, but those ones probably won't be available. They were just completed. They probably won't be available for about 6 to 8 weeks. But that's our first step out. So that's where the holes are coming from.
Okay, and where are you currently drilling?
Well, we currently have a drill that's extending 167 to depth. So we're driving it down to hit target B. These holes were drilled. We have 4 drills in country, so we've got 4 drills operating. 2 of them are larger drill rigs that we imported into the country late last year. This is about as far as we can drill with our smaller drill rigs. So these holes were pre-collared. We removed the small rigs and put a larger rig on here to extend this to depth. So that's what's going on now. We've got another drill at, sorry, I'll just go this way. We've got another drill at target C, probing the depth extent of target C. We've got one of the smaller drills at target D, looking at this material that's closer to surface. Keep in mind that these are sort of 50-meter bars. So this is only 50 meters to 100 meters below surface. And the last drill will be moving, it was at Montasso, it'll be moving over to try to define the new oxide intercept that we got at surface and see if we can expand that. So that's where our 4 drills will be operating for the next month anyway.
Okay, and your turnaround times right now are about 8 weeks?
The turnaround times are about 8 weeks. We're hoping that those will be condensed, but I think everyone in the industry is hoping it'll be condensed. I think everyone's suffering from similar difficulty, at least trying to use labs in Canada. Our labs, we do our preparation with Bureau Veritas in the Dominican Republic. They have a prep lab in Santiago, and then they ship pulps up to their lab in Vancouver. And their lab in Vancouver is, for various reasons, just choked. The COVID protocols have a lot to do with that in the lab, but they're just choked. So, we're continuing to use that facility because it's the only prep lab that's available to us in the Dominican Republic. The only other thing we can do to try to get a faster turnaround time would be to ship half core, which gets very expensive very quickly, to another lab. So for the time being, Bureau Veritas has told us that they will, they can't give us priority, but they can certainly try to be more consistent in the delivery of results.
Yeah, well, I think, like we've talked about, you're not alone in the delays, but at least your holes are worth waiting for, Joe.
Well, Wes Hansen, our chief operating officer, seems to sometimes I think he's a bit of a magic man. He's able to pull these these great intercepts. He's been doing it for close to 5 years now, and following and systematically increasing the resource that's available to us. And sometimes you just get lucky in areas you don't believe. But I do recall that in 2010, when I got involved with the company and went on the board, I did a site visit, the first site visit I did in January of 2010. And there was another director that was with me at the time who was also thinking about going on the board. And we walked this ground and we looked at some of the drilling that had been done. And, we realized that this area was just pregnant. The amount of alteration that we could see in the area, in some of the outcrops and in the drill core, and the amount of sulfur that had been injected into the system was some of the largest I've seen. And I've seen a lot of deposits around the world, but this area just seemed to be very pregnant. And I think we're just now starting to understand the size of it and, where, how to follow some of this mineralization and what we're dealing with. So I expect that over the next couple of years, we should have better exploration results as well, now that we've got a really firm base and understanding of the geology.
Are you looking at any other concessions in the DR?
To a certain extent, yes. We're always on the lookout, but I'll just go back to this slide Well, actually, maybe what I can do if I stop my sharing, well, I'll talk to this slide for the time being, but this mountain range that runs through Haiti and the Dominican Republic is volcanic island arc rocks. It's mostly acid volcanics. To the north, it's basic volcanics, but that's really the main trend of gold-bearing rocks in the country. At least half of it in the Dominican Republic is covered by a national park. There are some fantastic showings and some drainage anomalies coming out of that park, but I don't think anyone will ever be able to go in there and do exploration or mining. It's a beautiful area. And Pico Duarte is also the tallest mountain in the Caribbean, which is in the middle of that park. As we come down to this side, a lot of the ground is taken in this area around Constanza and over to Pueblo Viejo. It's mostly ultramafic rocks. They're not acidic volcanics. So most of the acid volcanics are our concession and just down the south side of the park, which is where I think the highest probability of finding large gold deposits exist in those acid volcanics. So there's just not a lot of other exposure in the DR. We've got most of the ground. I would say we've probably got 90% of the prospective ground in the DR is included in the Neita Concession. And, you know, we're quite happy to stay there. And we've got so many targets to go after in the Neita Concession that are drill ready. You know, there's another 14 or 15 targets. These are copper targets to the north. One of these is two chalcocite veins. They're parallel. They're about 1.5 meters wide, but they run, you know, sort of 50–60% copper. They're pure chalcocite. I think they're sitting on top of a porphyry, but we really need to get over and drill some holes and understand what we're dealing with. You know, and some of these other ones, Corozo seems to be got some porphyry affinity to it as well up in the north west. So we've got probably 20 more years of exploration to do on this concession. You know, it's a question of time, money, and you know, I guess having the drills at this point. We've done most of the groundwork, so I think we've got a lot on our plate right here.
Going back to the previous slide, can you show me where Barrick recently staked ground?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I can do, because if people go to the website of the government, I'll just stop my slide for the time being, and I will load up the government website, and then I should be able to just share this once again with the with people that are here. Let me share this screen, and it's this one. So this is the government website in the Dominican Republic, Manera.gobierno.dominicana. But they publish concession maps, which they update daily. And you can go to their website and you know, take a look at concessions that are available in the country, mining concessions, and see which ones have been staked. So I think you can see this loaded now. Haiti, Dominican Republic. You know, there's the Neita concession. You can see that it's clearly Unigold Resources, the Neita Fase Dos concession, and all of these other ones. The gray ones are applications. The yellows have been granted. So these two concessions on the east, you know, Barrick put in an application for those in September last year for these two concessions on the east side between the national park and ourselves. And then this concession, which is mostly in sediments, was one that an individual applied for. This is the Gold Quest Romero project. That's the one that's under application now for a mining license, and it was 2015 when they put in that application. And then Gold Quest owns ground as well around that. Their current active is Cachimbo, is a Gold Quest property, but you know, this is sort of the little wedge of acid volcanics that come around the south side of the park, and most of that's been staked up by various groups all the way over to Pueblo Viejo, which is this black square. That's the Pueblo Viejo mine. This is the Falconbridge Dominicana, which is a nickel laterite, which is some ultramafics that outcrop in that area as well. So most of the prospective ground is just here around the south side of the park and up to this area. We had these two concessions that Barrick has applied for. We had those two concessions many years ago. We dropped them in 2012 after we did some preliminary work on them. They're mostly basaltic volcanics. We didn't think they were very prospective for gold, and they were very close to the national park as well. And we felt that it would just be easier to stay away from the national park if at all possible.
Got it.
The Gold Quest, just one last thing, the Gold Quest concession is effectively right up against the national park as well, right? So, there's probably some valid environmental concerns by people, but I'm sure Gold Quest is designing their project to take that into consideration.
And Precipitate Gold, do you happen to know where their concession is?
Well, they have a concession over here with a JV with Barrick, which wraps around Pueblo Viejo. This black square is the Pueblo Viejo mine. So this is the precipitate that's under a joint venture with Barrick at this point in time. I believe Precipitate has other concessions which are around the south side of the park. I'll just have to flip through them here.
Getting pretty good with the zoom, Joe.
Oh, with being able to zoom in and out. I do look at this occasionally because there is some ground, that's tied up under application, that I think we'd like to do some exploration on, because there's some other very interesting outcrops and some very interesting showings in that volcanic belt. But as I said, most of it is inside the national park, which, no one will ever be able to do any exploration in there. But I think that's, the precipitate ground that they're, is this one primarily is that they're working on with Barrick right next to Pueblo Viejo.
I was going to say, now that you've gotten good with, navigating everything, it's probably time for the pandemic to end.
Exactly.
Another lost skill set.
Yeah. So I can pull out my rock hammer instead of my computer mouse.
So I have one more question. I don't see any others from the audience. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to input them. Otherwise, I'll just keep dominating, even though I told Joe it'd only be half an hour and I'm keeping him here for probably the full hour. So you were moving very quickly from pre-feas to feasibility study on the oxides. You put in your timeline like 6 months. You plan on going from the first study to the second. Is that just because you've done high quality work so far that's going into the pre-feas?
Yeah, it's a couple of things. I mean, it's not a large project. I think the capital costs we're still looking at it, but it's it'll probably be less than a $40 million capital cost on the project. So it's not a big mining project, and it doesn't have a big environmental footprint. So being able to move from a PFS to a bankable feasibility study, there will be more work, principally on the environmental side and principally on the detailed engineering. But we're not putting in 3-stage crushing, for instance. Most of this is pre-dig material. We don't have a big truck fleet. We're only mining about 3,000 tons a day from an open pit. So we can do that with road haul trucks and shovels. These are not big 777s or 797 cat 300-ton trucks by any stretch of the imagination. So it's a fairly small operation. So it should be fairly easy to move it through to that bankable phase. The detailed engineering, it's not complex. It's a heap leach. Most of the detailed engineering will be focused on water control, on the heap pad itself, as well as some of the laydown areas and some of the waste handling, but it's not complex. So we're quite sure we should be able to hit the BFS by the end of the year.
All right, that was my last question. I think we've gone over the catalysts so many times that I'm not going to make you reiterate them. Is there anything that we missed, Joe?
Well, I don't think so. The thing that we're excited about is that we had just got to a stage where we had decided to step out on the regional exploration and start looking at some of the other targets when we started getting drill results that indicated we're not done with the exploration around Candelones yet. That there's still other things to find in the immediate vicinity of where our largest resource is. So our internal discussions right now are revolving around. Do we want to take one drill and go out on the high risk exploration, but also high reward if you can turn one of the other exploration targets regionally into another resource, which, albeit would take a few years, that's a great win, but it's also high risk because you may end up with, mediocre results from doing that. Or do we stick to the area around where we know we've got mineralization, where we know that it is, higher grade mineralization that most likely will be economic, and do step outs and step downs, which is lower risk exploration, but it's incremental as well. It's not sort of that quantum leap that you would get from an exploration discovery. So those are sort of the discussions we're going through internally to try to figure out, what's the best way to apportion our resources.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I think that's a pretty good update. I don't know what else I can ask you.
Well, it's, I guess stay tuned. We're hoping news flow over the next 2 or 3 months are going to be fairly significant. Obviously, the PFS and the resource update will be, I think, very material to the company and to the share price. It's sort of a transition period. It's the first time we've done engineering looking at going into production. We've picked a small project that is achievable for us and it's achievable for the area. But I think that the sulfide resource, as soon as we get the oxide resource into production, we'll start engineering the sulfide resource and trying to understand whether we start putting in underground ramps to access that, or whether we start looking at a larger open pit, or a combination of the two. So that should be, I think, transformative for the company over the course of the next 3 or 4 months.
One thing that we haven't really touched on is valuation right now. And I know you can't really comment on where you think the stock should trade, but based on like the current market cap and the resources that you currently have, I think it's trading at around $10 to $12 an ounce. Maybe that's a little bit higher because you've traded up over the last few days. Like, assuming that you put out a material resource increase, like that's going to be even lower. I think it's something like, when I think about Unigold, it's a late stage exploration project and you're trading at a multiple of like something that should be much earlier. I don't know. That's my view. How do you look at valuation for the company?
Well, as I'll put on my analyst hat, I worked as an analyst for a number of years covering gold companies. Whenever there's a separation between the peers and another group, whether it's on the upside or the downside, you always have to ask, what am I missing here? And in this case, I don't think we're missing anything. I think the market has just not yet woken up to what the deposit looks like, has not woken up to the fact that the Dominican Republic and permitting in the Dominican Republic has changed dramatically when a new government came into power last August. And the new president and the new ministers are, so far they've been very supportive of mining, and they want to see new mines come into production in the country, but they will not do that without having community buy-in and without having community support. They're quite clear on that, and they seem to be very, let's say, more supportive of the mining industry. But they want to make sure that they're doing things properly. They want to make sure that companies are responsible, and they want to make sure that the resources are developed hand in hand with the local communities. So, I think when we can show people that the permitting process is easy to go through, that I think people will wake up and realize that the deposits and the let's say the exploration potential in the Dominican Republic is something that shouldn't be discounted. There's world-class deposits here. The third largest gold mine in the world is in the country, and there's no reason why there shouldn't be other tier one assets in the country as well. And I think we're well on our way to finding and defining one.
All right, we've got a special guest for you, Joe. I guess one of your board members is checking up on you.
I see Jose Acero is certainly watching and in the chat room. Jose is our director in the Dominican Republic. He's a resident in Santo Domingo, and he's been supportive. He's been involved in this company since 2002. He was one of the founding shareholders of the company and of the concessions in the Dominican Republic. He's been involved in mining in the DR for decades. He's a great resource for us in the country and keeps us, let's say, up to speed on what's going on in the country. And I'm sure if anyone has any specific questions for him, he's in the chat room, so I'm sure he'd be happy to answer them.
Well, I actually just turned on his mic. He had something he wanted. Yeah, he wanted to say something about precipitate. Hi, Jose.
Hi, how are
you? Hi, Jose.
Nice to meet you.
Very well, thank you. Nice to
meet you too. What I want is to add that Precipitate has the concession alongside Barrick. I have personally, with other partners, another concession that is in neighborhood with Barrick. The name is Pico Verde. And as Joe said, Precipitate has one concession also on Juan de Herrera, near Juan de Herrera, that is nearby Gold Quest. And I have another concession that called Tideo Oriental. Those three with and Unigold are on the same formation, Tideo. So, and Precipitate make one deep hole and was very successful on near the border with my concession. So what Joe is saying to you, that the growth of Unigold, and I believe 100%, is to find not only Candelones, but find other sources, other good places that has good anomalies, and trying to expand. Let's say, I am in the border with Barrick, and Barrick is a monster. So, and the concession that I have over there, that is Pico Verde, with other partners, was the first mine of copper in Americas. Is in the history. So we have a lot of knowledge where anomalies, good anomalies, and where to spend a good money and have a good results. So that's what I want to add on the comment of Joe made.
Yeah, thanks, Jose. I mean, it's, Jose and I, we've had this conversation many times, that there are the prospective ground in the Dominican Republic. There's been a history of mining for centuries in the Dominican Republic. There is still good ground to be had. We think for us, and we've talked about this internally inside Unigold. We've got a lot on our plate with Neita, but there's plenty of other concessions and ground in the area and other development models, copper specifically, in some of the mafics and ultramafics that are in the what's called the Duarte Formation, which is just north of the Tarira Formation. And the government has, and Jose has asked many times, and the government has asked as well, is how do we attract more investment and get more companies in here doing exploration? Because it's a great place to work. And ground is relatively easy to come by. It's easy enough, although some of the concessions are already taken or applied for by people, it's easy enough to come in and do joint ventures with the underlying property owners as well. So, I would suggest, if there's any other companies listening or any other shareholders, that, great place to do exploration. We just happen to be the one that's been there longest and spending the most amount of money, but no reason why there shouldn't be more people at the party, I think is the way to describe it.
Definitely with the expansion of Barrick, Pico Verde has the beauty that is on the top, there's a limestone, a special limestone, about 150 million cubic meters that Barrick will need it to, and we will negotiate with them in order that they will need about 5,000 tons a day. And at the same time that we are developed the limestone mine, we will be drilling for the metallics that are on the ground. Monaisa, that is Australian company. They make some research on that, but I couldn't find the results that were very good, but I couldn't find it because the mining department only have the size of the hole, but all the data disappeared. And people that after that named the concession long year didn't want to give me the data, but I have the concession and I will have the exploitation in next year. And I will drilling. We will drilling. We can make a joint venture with Unigold, and we are alongside the big papa.
That's interesting.
So there's plenty of other work to do in the Dominican Republic. But Deborah, I have to jump to another call in 2 minutes. So just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to present, and thank people for listening for the full hour.
Thanks, Joe.
A bit longer, but
I think you're going to be hesitant next time I ask you.
and last thing is that I have 2 granddaughters that are Australians. My daughter graduated of MD in Adelaide, and she lives in the city, in the what is the name? The opera, Sydney. So I'm involved with Australia also.
Okay. So if anyone's looking for 2 of Jose's daughters or some concessions in Australia or Dominican, no.
Yeah.
Off you go.
Let's get some bids. Anyway, Jose, it was really nice to meet you. Joe, always a pleasure. Thanks for participating, everyone that made time today, and have a good afternoon.
Thanks for your input, Jose.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jose.
Bye-bye.